Welcome. It is Thursday Night Live, and we are here joined by our special guest, the one and only Dr. Kari Ragan, to talk about her book, A Systematic Approach to Voice. Welcome.
Thank you. I love that countdown. That is quite something.
Yeah, we like to try to keep it alive. I mean, it's Thursday. People are fading. But we have especially a lot of stuff, important stuff to be talking about tonight. So I'm excited to be here. For those of you who don't know Dr. Kari Ragan, she is the author, as I said at the top, of A Systematic Approach to Voice. You can tell I like this book a lot, and whenever I have notes in the background. She's a singing voice specialist located up in Seattle, Washington. She has been a winner of the Van Lawrence Fellowship, which is presented by the Voice Foundation and the National Association for Teachers of Singing, to a voice teacher who is dedicated to research and bringing knowledge from research to the voice pedagogy community, as you're going to see she's done as we talk about her book. And it's really exciting that they just announced within the past couple of weeks that she is going to be one of the master teachers for the NATS intern program this summer, which, if you don't know, that's a special honor. They pick 4 teachers in any given year out of the 7,000 members of NATS to be mentors to about 12 up-and-coming voice teachers and 3 up-and-coming collaborative pianists. So I'm very excited for her to be doing that and for the students who are going to get to work with her. So welcome.
Thank you. That was very lovely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome, Dr. Kari Ragan. So good to have you. I just have to say, this book, if you guys don't have this book, that's what we're talking about today, and you need to buy this book. It needs to be the next book you read. So hopefully we pique your interest with some of the questions today that we're going to go over.
So to start, you titled this, A Systematic Approach to Singing. So what is this book going to, for our viewers, do for those who are, both either singers or teachers?
Well, and it's Systematic Approach to Voice, the Art of Studio Application.
Oh, well, I can't type correctly, but
No, you typed correctly, but there's a colon. And the reason I mention that, Matt, not to correct you, but because for me, it's all about the application. Right. We have had this wonderful wealth of voice science and voice research the last 20, 30 years that we now, as voice teachers, I've been teaching 38-ish years. And so we voice teachers have this wonderful wealth of information, of accurate information as we know it today, the 24th of September, 2020. I always say to my PED class, check back with me in a year. Because things are changing and we learn more and more all the time. So for me, it was about taking that wealth of knowledge from the incredible people, the Ingo Tietze, the Johann Sundberg, the Richard Miller, the Cornelius Reed, et cetera, James McKinney. We could go on and on, right? With these people that we are so indebted to and that I feel like I stand on their shoulders. But I'm somebody who lives in a studio one-on-one teaching 35 hours a week. So how is that information relevant? And so that's what the intent of the book was, and the art of studio application is to help people know how to apply that information.
Yeah, it's great. Now, Mike mentioned this. Mike, you want to take this?
Okay, so in the book, and I love this point because a lot of times as a singer, you're like, I'm going to go to my teacher and they're going to make me a great singer. But you mentioned that teachers are not necessarily there just to teach someone how to sing, but rather how to practice. Mm-hmm. So can you elaborate? Like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah. Well, isn't that our job? We only, it's not like the days of yore, right? Pavarotti saw his teacher 5 or 7 days a week. I can't remember. A lot of that earlier generation of opera singer, they saw their teachers every day. They hardly sang a note without their teacher. And those days are long gone. People can barely afford to see their teacher once a week, twice a month. And so to me, there's a great responsibility to make sure that in that lesson time, I'm helping students understand what the intent of any exercise is. You don't just give them an exercise. You don't need to go into a lot of detail, but you need to help them understand this is the intent of that exercise. Here's how to practice it, and here's why you might choose it. And in fact, leading back to your original question about a systematic approach, what's so appealing to me about that is what I realized as I started to study voice science. And you understand that there are the 5 primary systems with the registration added for singers: respiration, phonation, registration, articulation, resonance, right? And so when I'm listening to a singer in a lesson, I'm automatically somewhat diagnosing which system do I think needs rebalancing, knowing that the systems work independently and interdependently. So a change in one of the systems changes the whole. So you have to understand all that. But as I teach, helping the students understand the premise of why a particular vocal exercise has been chosen, and so that they know when they go away why they're choosing an exercise. And in fact, really making them, it's a partnership. Again, Matt and I'm older than Matt, but raised in the day of master student. We didn't ask questions. Our teachers never asked, how does your voice feel? You know, they just shut up and sing, right? And if you're not doing it right, they're going to tell you. And with all due respect, I had wonderful teachers. I studied for over 20 years with the renowned Ellen Fall, who I loved, and credit a lot of my teaching style to her. Even though she was a pre-science teacher, she intuitively was a phenomenal teacher. And ironically, she's the one that taught me about how to practice. We didn't talk about it the way I talk about with my students, but just by the way she structured a lesson, I realized she was giving me the tools to know how to go home and work the arias in the way that we did them in lessons. So it was this kind of strategic approach. So that's what the teaching them how to practice. And of course, there's so much now about motor learning, right? Cognitive science. If you haven't read Lynn Helding's book or had her on yet, that she should be your I mean, her book is phenomenal. And her column for 10 years that now Lynn Maxfield has taken over. All that wealth of knowledge about cognitive science, we've got to be paying attention to that now. So how to practice aligns with that, helping them to know an efficient way to practice.
Yeah,
that's great.
The brain side of it, I think that now that we're getting all this research is going to become even more and more prominent than what a lot of us have spent time on for years with acoustics and
I agree.
Biomechanics. That is really fascinating. And I love Lynn. We actually, for those watching who don't know, I'm the artistic director of what's called the CCM Vocal Pedagogy Institute, and she's our Lifetime Achievement Award honoree this year. So she's received the CCM Voice Pedagogy Lifetime Achievement Award for all of her contributions because she's incredible and going to teach a workshop. And she's amazing. So,
I agree with you, Matt, that the last 10 years has been acoustics, right? And I think that the next 10 years is really going to be the cognitive science aspect of voice training.
Yeah, and it's fun. What I love is that the field's bringing in so many new ideas so that it's not just the same thing. And that brings me to this next thing, which is a term that you helped coin, which, I think a lot of us were seeking for a way to describe what we do. I was part of PAVA, I think you've been to, the Pan American Vocology Association. And, there's always been this push to try to figure out how do we define what those of us who use our own experience, but also voice science. And you coined this amazing term drawn from the medical world of evidence-based voice pedagogy. And I love how you describe this merging of different parts of our work. So can you kind of explain to viewers what this term means, how you kind of came up with this idea and how it merges the things that we do?
Yeah. So because I work with the medical community, I'm often, engaged in conversations, and I run a conference here with my colleagues from the UW Speech and Hearing and Laryngology Department. Called Northwest. Oh my gosh, I'm rather tired. What's the name of my conference?
It's the Northwest Voice.
Northwest Voice, Art and Science of the Performing Voice. Northwest, yes. So anyway, it's the multidisciplinary approach to voice between the 3 disciplines. So anyway, there were several events that came together. I was preparing to speak at the Vennard conference, and all of a sudden a bunch of dots came together, and I had also been seeing on Facebook a lot of this debate about voice science doesn't really help us in the studio. And, a lot of our ideas come from Facebook conversations. And all of a sudden it just occurred to me, I had seen the Venn diagram for evidence-based medicine and then evidence-based practice. It was adopted by the speech and hearing and other behavioral science fields called evidence-based practice. And it has these three components to it. And I thought, wait a minute, I keep hearing the word evidence-based voice pedagogy, and it was being associated with science, voice science, science pedagogy, function-based pedagogy. But the whole point of EBM, evidence-based medicine, and evidence-based practice is that there are three distinct components, and the science is only one. So I thought, why are we not adopting that for the singing world? So I somewhat stole the idea from them, obviously, or adapted it. I didn't steal it. So there are three components, and I don't know, Matt, can I hold this up?
Yeah, I can see it. Yep. There you go.
Okay. Oh, goodness. Great. Whole camera thing.
Perfect. You can spotlight her.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I'll spotlight it. There we go.
So voice research, student goals and perspectives, and voice teacher expertise and experience. Thanks for helping me with that. So those are the three components that make up evidence-based medicine. So I don't want it to be confused or conflated with voice science alone or science-informed pedagogy alone, because we have to take into account my and your expertise. And I hate the word expertise, but advanced learning didn't really fit. So I went with expertise and experience. So, 37 years of teaching, 35 hours a week. I've had a lot of guinea pigs go through my studio, a variety of ages, a variety of abilities, from professional to avocational to young teenagers. And so all of that counts as a teacher, right? And what one of the main intents of EBVP was to bring everyone to the table, so that if a voice teacher has been out having a wonderful career, they've sung at the Met, they've sung at La Scala, they've sung wherever, and then they come to teaching as the second act in their career trajectory, I wanted them to feel like they had a place at the table, right? There's such, I don't know, there just seems to be a lot of battling in our field, and I want to help eliminate that to some degree. But I also would ask that those people who have spent a life on a stage acknowledge that those of us who have spent a life in the studio learning how to be effective teachers, that there's value in that. Just because I never sang at the Met doesn't mean there isn't value. So the hope is that they'll pick up a voice science book, a voice pedagogy book, right? And the hope is that those of us maybe who have done book learning are also outperforming to some degree. And then the third component is the student goals and perspectives, because all of that is nothing without listening to our students, taking into account their needs, what their goals are, where they are on a given lesson day, emotionally, physically, vocally. Yeah. I had a student a couple weeks ago who I always do a check-in at the beginning of the lesson. How's your voice today? Where are we? And the student just very clearly said, I just need some love for my larynx today. And I just, her goals that day, and she's a professional singer, her goals that day were not, I want to work on this aria and, really work on polishing it. Her goals, because of many things in her life, she simply needed a vocal lesson to reset everything and get some love for her larynx. So that's an example of a student goal and perspective on a given day.
Which, like you said, is totally different than, it is a different mindset than teachers I used to go to when I was our students' age. Yeah. My desires weren't really that important. Again, I had a couple of amazing teachers, and then I had a lot of other teachers. Yeah. And so, but the other teachers were the ones where I was like, wow, this isn't going to work, yeah. But I love what you said about bringing us all to the table, because I know that Mike and I both share the view that it takes a village. like you got to have an entire team as a voice person. We used to think, again, in the past, that one person could hold all the answers, but there's just too much out there to know nowadays. Like we were talking about at the top of the show with the neurology and the brain science side of it, you know, that we need to have people who specialize in these different areas so we can learn from them and take the tools back. And so,
and even within CCM, you know, I have a lot of teachers that study with me. So I've got different students, ones who specialize in children. So I'm so thrilled. I have no interest in working with children. So I'm so happy to refer, here's somebody who specializes. That's because that really is a whole specialty. Or I have a student is a phenomenal pop R&B singer and is a phenomenal teacher. So, you know, if I have somebody who's injured and I need to help in the restoration, rehabilitation, but then that's not my specialty of style. So I'm so happy to go, look, I've got this person who actually can make those sounds with their voice and understands them. So I agree with you, Matt. Like our field has gotten so big. And so it's okay to be able to refer to others for different aspects. Same with the injured singer. I don't want voice teachers who don't work on a medical team, right? To be thinking that they should be rehabilitating. There are those of us who have really made a specialty of studying that and working collaboratively. So there's so many pieces of the pie now. It's so different than 25 years ago.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, I'll turn it over to Mike on this one, but you know, another thing you and I talked about on a side chat was just this idea of using tools inside of the studio where we were respiratory systems, some of the stuff with the respiratory tools, right, Mike?
Yeah, so you mentioned a lot of, you know, the goal of the book is application, right? So after, you know, you go through a couple chapters warming us up, explaining the background, and then there's like the 5 main systems you go through. So the first system that you bring up is the respiration system. So what are some of the tools, if you could just break down, give us, I mean, obviously don't give the whole book away, you guys should buy the book, but what are some of the tools that you share with us in this chapter?
Yeah, and I want to make sure everyone knows that, because I have so many people that don't know this that own the book. On the very first page, it will, oh my gosh, I'm really bad at this. Oh, there we go. There is a Plural Plus companion. And so there are 100 videos on the Plural's website of each one of the exercises. Because it's, you know, in the book, each exercise comes with a purpose, then the notation for the exercise itself, and then an explanation of how to do the exercise. So the group is very much organized in that fashion. But it's no fun reading an exercise when you can hear it.
Sure, absolutely. That's great. I did not know there were videos, and I went through. There's 88 that I counted, so that's good. There's 100. So, and I'll let you finish. Janin, you can get the book on Amazon. I don't know if is that the best place for Plural, but that's where I got mine. Amazon took 2 days.
Yep, Amazon or Plural, it's there. And the one, 88 is within the systematic chapters, but Mike, then the last chapter are vocal warm-ups. There are 8 vocal warm-up series. So, and all those singers were my students, and we were doing, some of them were in the middle of COVID. That all hit right as I was finishing this book. That's so some of them are not, you'll see there are a few different locations from where we started. So we got it through. But so yes, there are videos. So I wanted to say that. But as far as tools, I really love tools. And I mentioned this in the book about, I have a colleague, in fact, who talks about, you know, those people and their tricks. And listen, everybody in our field has strong opinions, and you are entitled to your opinions. What I can tell you is my tricks, my tools really help facilitate a kinesthetic awareness of what change I want. Because as we know from motor learning, we teachers talk too much. There's a wonderful article out there, Singing Teachers Talk Too Much. And so we know that we don't want to talk. There are times where we need to explain something, but mostly the students need to experience the change that you're asking them. And so for me, tools have always done that. We don't want to keep them forever, right? But they, for me, are a touchstone. So I have many, many, many students who are still with me 8-10 years later. I don't pick up the tools very often with them anymore. But once in a while, I'm like, okay, let's get back to baseline. Let's this week review our baseline of respiration and pull out some of these old tools and see what the voice feels like. Because we have to constantly recalibrate the voice, right? As our voice continues to mature. So now let me get to your exact question, Mike, sorry. Some of my favorite tools, well, Flowball, Mr. Flowball, is one of my absolute favorites. And you can, I always tell people just go to the Voice Foundation. Sorry, Maria Russo. Just type in Google Voice Foundation Flowball. And for $10, this little thing of joy can be yours. And
are you going to show us how it works? I'm so curious.
I am. And I will tell you, this ball gets beaten up really quickly. So put it in like a pill bottle or something to protect it. So I have several different exercises. I won't go. One of my favorites I call, I make up names of, it's called the Voiceless Messa di Voce. And so you're just going to go real slow up and down. And I tell you what, on that descent, I feel that those abdominal muscles that I want to gently engage, right? I don't want to make them rigid. I want to gently engage them. In order for me to control that ball, I feel that kick in. So a younger singer who is trying to experience what we talk about with the mechanics of breathing, this tool will kick it in. So that's one exercise. I love little voiceless staccati. And you can talk about different dynamic levels doing that. So that's another, so that they can feel that engagement release with the pulse of the ball. And then it wasn't designed for this, and it took me a long time to be okay with it, but I actually do voicing through it. And it's wonderful with voicing for a legato line, so that if you have a student that just bop, 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 that you can't quite get them to connect, that you will see that ball. So that visual feedback, suddenly they feel this legato line. And yeah, so I call that flonating. I think I'm very funny. I put that in the book. And not to be confused with flow phonation, but flonate, F-L-O-W, flonating. So what else? One of my other ones that I talk about a lot is, I don't talk about this in the book, but with the male singer, in that secondo passaggio, you know, they'll be singing along and all of a sudden they hit an F4 and you can just all of a sudden hear the restriction in their voice, right? So I'll have them flonate it. And all of a sudden, you know, the ball's going along, and I don't want the ball super high when we flonate. I feel like I get fatigue, so I keep it about there when they flonate. And all of a sudden they're singing along lovely, and boom, they get to an F4 or F sharp. I'm making that idea up, but that did happen with a student, and the ball just drops. So then you encourage that airflow and it stays even, and they suddenly feel different, and off they go. So that's a couple of fun ones with the flow ball. I love flow ball. I use a bar 3 ball, bar 3, because it's just the right amount of cushy and firm. This one's a little flat right now. So lots of things. You can squeeze it. If they squeeze it here, I have them place it around the belly button, and they can squeeze with their arms. They can squeeze with their, thanks, Matt, squeeze with their sitting in a chair, squeezing with their knees, or squeezing between their ankles. So that's another one. And then they just sing while squeezing the ball. And they can, all of a sudden, again, they feel connection to their breath mechanics. Another is just any exercise band like this to, you know, I'm sure all of, oh, what, that one broke.
Not that one.
Not that one. You can, have them, there's different positions depending on the singer, right? You always have to explore with the singer. They can wrap it around the piano leg and engage. And I would say one of the things with the bands is to make sure that as they engage, again, there's no rigidity in the breath mechanics, and that when they inhale, that they're sure to release the abdominal engagement that they've just done on the exhalation, that they really release that abdominal wall, that doesn't create more tension. So, right, with everything, tools have to be modified. And I don't have it handy, but one of my others is a big ball, a 45 centimeter, which I use a ton, both for stretching before they begin to sing. But my favorite with the great big ball is putting it in the small of the back, leaning against the wall, and then going into a squat, especially for both belting and classical singing, high intensity singing. And again, they just, all of a sudden, the voice just, both the breath changes and the resonance strategy changes, and you can hear suddenly the voice becomes more engaged, the body becomes more engaged. So those are a few that are in the book. Probably may have been all of the breath ones, I think. Sorry, one more. This is from my beloved Ellen Fall. So when I came to her after I graduated from Indiana University with a very flawed singing voice. So this is called Futuro Surgical Abdominal Support. It's the only one that I like. And you just wear it around right in the middle, and it just has enough resistance to help you to learn that buoyant rib cage expansion and engagement. And again, the intent has to be understood, that we're not creating rigidity, that all of this is about engagement and buoyancy. So that's another of my favorite tools.
Yeah, I like you bring that up a lot in there, is thinking about the respiratory system as being buoyant. I thought it's a great term to describe it.
Yeah.
So many times it gets rigid.
Yep.
In any of the other ways.
And of course, because teachers are constantly saying, keep your ribs out, right? So I like to talk about it if A is neutral, right? And then if we expand, maybe let's think of that as C, a little bit of an expansion. And then and B is the range. So instead of at the end of every phrase, we're back to neutral. Can we buoyantly stay in this range so that each breath we don't have to completely re-engage, but that we understand that there's flexibility in that thorax?
Yeah, that's a really good way of explaining it.
Well,
so one of the other things I thought was cool in here is your idea of the registration slide rule. I should have had that already ready to pull up, but you have this great image with rulers and showing, I'll let you describe it, but talking about the variations of registration within the voice.
Yes. Yeah, that little, it's so funny when you finally see it, because there was many versions of the language. I could not decide. And a few conversations with my dear friend Ken Bozeman helping me to come up with the final language. But basically, do you want me to hold it, Matt?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. There you go.
So you can see that I cannot do this. I clearly am not a weather person. So you have the laryngeal source slide rule, and then the resonance strategy slide rule. And then on the laryngeal source, you have from chest mode 1 to head mode 2. And on the resonance strategy, from a brassy resonance strategy to a lofted resonance strategy. So the divergent vocal tract shape to the convergent vocal tract shape. So that was it was a way, what I have found when I'm demonstrating to singers is that I could, and I have been teaching since 9 o'clock this morning, so I'm not going to even pretend, but if I were in a chest like I am right now speaking, I could do either a brassy ah or a lofted ah all in chest, and then I would demonstrate in a head register a brassy to a lofted. And suddenly everybody just seems to go, oh, especially people that are untrained, right? Yeah. Maybe they're an injured singer that are CCM and have come to me through the medical community. They've been singing professionally their whole life, but haven't really ever studied. And they know the terms head and chest. but it just, when you demonstrate those different qualities, they suddenly there's a light bulb. And one of the things that I want singers to understand, when you're classically trained, especially my generation, there was one right way to sing. We were always only looking for the right way to sing. And what I love now about the voice community is there are these different aesthetics that are okay and acceptable, and especially within the CCM. Yes, there is a functionally efficient way to sing, but beyond that, there are colors. And I want students to be able to play with these colors. And so I felt like the slide rule both helped to illuminate vocal function and then the aesthetics and the possibilities that one could explore. Have you played with it at all, Matt or Mike, either of you?
I'm going to be introducing it. My students, so I'm using the book in my graduate supervised private teaching course at Shenandoah. It's for our master's and doctorate voice pedagogy students. And that's the reading assignment. So I'll be talking about it here next week. It'll be good.
Well, and I want to just say this book is not meant to be used as a primary. That was, not what I wanted. You get a review from the publisher before you finalize it, and somebody made a comment about, well, there isn't enough information, and I said, well, that's good. That's not the intent. We have Scott McCoy's book, who I think is a phenomenal pedagogy book for semester 1. And then my book is really for the application of that, so that when students read each chapter, I do a brief overview of the mechanics, right? The principles of voice production within that system. My hope is they'll be like, oh yes, I remember me reading that in Tita's book, or McCoy's book, or Marcy and Wendy's book, or whatever book a teacher's using, that will help ring a bell. And then get into the stuff that most of them want to know in their 20s, right? Yeah. They really want to know, how does it apply to them? Some of them want to teach. So how does it apply to their teaching? Because that's what you'll be doing. They'll be teaching, right, Matt?
Yeah, they're teaching. Yeah, they've already had anatomy, and right. Lucky's, we have a cadaver lab, so they're actually in the cadaver lab on top of doing the others. Then they have a whole acoustics class where they go through Ken Bozeman's and Ingo Tietze's work. Then they have comparative teaching methods where they're going through all kinds of stuff. So yeah, by the time I get them, they've read a lot of these things, and that's what's great. Is I just feel like so many times in PED, there's been a lack of something that kind of walks through and is like, here's the place to start. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I think that they need. And that's why when I saw your book, I was like, this is great. This is getting them a place to start. And then to realize with the philosophy of evidence-based practice that they need to bring in their own experiences, the things they're learning along the way from students and what they're reading and the evidence. And so you're right. I think it's a great book for like tying the bits together so that our students can leave these PED programs and know what to do.
And isn't that the fun of teaching? Like I once you get the confidence, the fun is everybody that walks in your door is having to quickly think, I need to design an exercise because I hear this thing that I want to help with. But when you're a young teacher, I mean, it's hard to remember back to my first lessons. I'm sure I should give everybody a refund, right?
I think we all do that.
You taught how you were taught, right? Which may or may not have any significance to, with that particular singer. And so that's what I wanted the book to be, a place for people to feel confident in their teaching. And then hopefully though, I can't wait in the next year or two for somebody to say, gosh, that exercise inspired this. And for me to learn exercises that others have come up with that are a variation on a theme.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, you asked, I'm using it as a reference right now. And as I've gone through the book, I'm notating, okay, this exercise I can use with this student. Oh, so great. Already I could see, definitely some great practical places to apply many of the things that are in here. And I'm sure, as you mentioned, the longer you teach, the more students you have, the more places you go, oh, where can I go? Where can I grab it? So I think it's a great, excellent resource to grab different exercises and try them out.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad. Thank you. I have to say, I just have been relieved more than any other feeling I've had the last few months at the kindness about this book, because, you work on it. I became paralyzed for a while because you think something and then you read a fight on Facebook, and I just became paralyzed with how to write, because every sentence I would think, well, this person's going to draw a hole in that thought, and and it was nut making, and so I have been really so deeply grateful.
Yeah, it's nerve wracking putting something out there and just waiting, thinking, I know what you're talking about. You can dwell on it forever, going, oh, but what if, but well, technically, yeah.
Right? Technically this, and technically that. Yep. Yeah, for
Absolutely.
sure.
So, can you talk to us a little bit about your approach to resonance?
Yes. Isn't that the work of the studio in a lot of ways? I mean, it's all of the systems, but I think in some ways resonance is, it's the outcome of the good function, right? I hate the word placement, so let's just put that out there. I abhor that word. If people use it and find it useful in their studio, then I'm not criticizing you, because I think that every word we can attach meaning however we want to in our own studio. But I am from a generation where that word became this physical thing that I was trying to achieve, like the word support. I abhor that word as well, by and large, because it has physical relationship for me that is negative. So for resonance, I think, I think the best way I can answer that question, Matt, one of the most interesting parts for me about researching the book was the word twang. Mm-hmm. And you and I were chatting about that the other day. And again, we don't need to debate. If that word doesn't work for you, move on, right? Pick another word. There's lots to choose from. But what really stood out to me a few years ago is that word really was being used a lot suddenly. And then I heard people that I really respect, voice teachers, were saying, well, that's just singer's formant. And I thought, what? Like, I heard a lot of teachers writing and talking about that, and it didn't make sense to me. And so luckily I came across Kari Obert's work, who went deep into the swallowing research and started to figure out some pretty cool things. So I go into that in the Resonant Chapter book for the CCM. And again, that's my word, brassy or twang, to counterbalance lofted resonance. And so just back to the slide rule, thinking about a taller vocal tract shape versus we have a different setup for more of a belt or a twang or a brassy, and we can think of it externally as a little bit more horizontal, but understanding internally there are different things going on physiologically between those two continuums and acoustically. And so that's what I tried to clarify in the book, was a little bit about an approach to those two resonance strategies, both what we know about them scientifically, and then again, how do we take that into the studio and play with that continuum? Yeah. So I don't know if that really,
No, but it is. But I that's one of the things, I'm with you on the forward placement. I mean, it's... Yeah, we could have a whole show about that.
The pernicious forward method. Let's just get rid of it.
Yeah, but the thing I loved though was of course you're backing it up with science, but then you brought this new idea in from Kari and then from Chadley Ballantyne, yep, which are actually trying to give us some actual quantitative, data on measurements and what's happening in the piriform sinuses that might be contributing to this extra boost in frequency. And that's the first time I'd seen that in print. I sent Chadley a message, and I was like, I want to know more about this, because this is interesting, very interesting.
Yeah, both of them have Kari actually has an article now out a bit. Chadley's, I think, is lined up. But yeah, my book really was the first one where I and again, it's not my work. So, I stand on the shoulders of these fabulous people, but that I really talk about the through line that I want people to understand is ring. If we're talking about efficiency at a high frequency or high intensity singing, that ring is our goal. Because if you're belting or if you're in classical singing, both high intensity singing, we need something to know that we have efficiency in the instrument. And so the vocal ring for me is the through line of that. And then we've come up with different labels for what the outcome of that is. And so what I wanted people to know is that depending on what label you're talking about and what aesthetic you're talking about, that they are physiologically and aesthetically different.
Yeah.
And so I think we need to understand that a little bit more. And I think there's a lot more coming with that, thanks to Chadley and Kari and others.
Yeah, well, I mean, as technology continues to improve, I mean, Ingo talks about first spectrographs and the big machine. I mean, it was huge. It's like the size of a stove to get all the stuff in there. And now we can do it literally on the cell phone that we're carrying around in our pocket. So as technology continues, we just get more and more great stuff available to us. Just a couple things from the comment section. Norma Jean said functionally efficient. I love that term instead of right or wrong. I do too. Right? It's the wrong doesn't really accomplish anything positive.
No.
Yeah, and then we had one other question from Alice. She asked about the videos. Are they purchased separately? No, they're actually free along with the purchase of the book, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So you can jump on over there and pick up the book, and the videos come. And I believe I already put, if you scroll back up in the comments, there is a link that'll take you over to an option to purchase the book. So another thing, like throughout this, you were talking about, exercises for the jaw and the tongue. And then as you and I were chatting about this, you mentioned this, and another great way of framing the idea is decoupling the articulators. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Is that in the book? Do I say that? Decoupling?
I think you said it to me in the chat. And I was like, you know what? That is what it is. I'm usually saying isolating the tongue from the jaw or whatever. And then you said decoupling the articulators. That's like, well said.
I don't think that's in the book, that language, which I wish it were. Because
second edition. No second edition.
I better make a note of that.
You definitely mentioned like the independence and the interdependence. So I can definitely see how someone will make this inference. So
yeah, for sure. Yes. And again, because of my SVS work, but I think even regardless of that, you have to, first of all, biologically, we have to understand and be grateful how those structures of the articulators work together, right? It allows us to chew and swallow and, right, all these things that we need to do to live every day. But as a singer, those biological reactions or interactions really aren't so great for us in many, many ways. In fact, they cause a lot of problems. And so I think a lot of our work is first of all, letting the students know that muscles of the tongue and the jaw insert into the hyoid bone, right? The suspension point for the larynx. And so that when we move one structure, it can impact the others. And so I think I have a lot of stretches in the book, both unvoiced and voiced for jaw and tongue. And being able to isolate and work those structures, I think, is important. It's like any athlete who stretches their quads right before they go for a run. It's part of that process. And what singer has not dealt with tongue tension at some point in their singing? I remember being at a NATS conference years ago, and they asked, who's dealt with tongue tension? And there was not of the 1,000 voice teachers there wasn't a hand that didn't go up, right? So I think we can all relate to that. So just having an awareness of that and working to stretch and release and start to create some independence within those structures. And of course, the other thing that's cool about the articulators is those are the movable parts that create the resonance strategy. So the articulators work upstream, if we think of resonance as upstream because of the sympathetic vibrations, and downstream into the larynx, and of course then the breath. So I think the articulators, and they are movable, we have control over them. So how can we not spend a lot of time thinking about how to use them efficiently? Yeah. And so decoupling, the interdependence of those structures.
Yeah, it's when I finally got a teacher who helped me figure that out, gosh, it opened up so many things. I know others in hindsight, you look back and look at how many tried to, but really getting in there and using some of the exercises that you write about in the book
Yeah.
makes the world a difference of, unlocking so many things that just get in the singer's way.
Well, and I love this idea that Nicholas Perna has put forth, and he's going to be on a Nats chat with me this year with Marcy Rosenberg. Why are we afraid? I won't touch, even as an SBS, I will not touch my students' larynx. I am not a licensed massage therapist nor a speech language pathologist. So I'm very clear about my scope of practice. But why are we afraid to touch? I mean, again, in my younger days, I would never have done that in a lesson. Even if I felt fatigue or something, why are we afraid of that? If you have a tight neck, we don't hesitate to do this. So why don't we help understand some of that work that we can do? Nicholas, of course, did some research on laryngeal massage. And then for me, if we're going to talk about something like that, I need to bring somebody on for the medical field. So Marcy's going to come on, and they're going to walk us through some specific massages. But in my daily practice with students, injured and non-injured, we go through some very specific massages and talk about different structures and how we can find some release, and they immediately feel better. Yeah. So I would like that going forward. Again, it has to be in the hands of some knowledgeable teachers. You can't just name a muscle and not understand it. Yeah. So I hope that comes into our field.
I hope so too. It's interesting that you mentioned that though too, because we had Andrew Byrne on a couple weeks ago, New York City voice teacher, and he was talking about different traumas and of an injury, and that of people, how they're sometimes afraid to even touch that or they avoid it. And so it's interesting that you're saying, well, why don't we touch it? Yet we're talking about tensions and other things. It's like, I wonder how much that's psychological too of this, tendency. And the more that we learn about brain science, the more we'll have answers to that.
Mm-hmm. And isn't
Hi, Marcy.
What's that?
Marcy just joined us.
Oh, yay!
Marcy, I didn't see.
Always love to see Marcy.
I was just talking about you, friend, about the Nats chat.
She's the best. Yeah,
she is the best.
She's awesome. Well, we're coming to the end here. This is all, great information. Like I said, if you're just tuning in, scroll back up in the comments a little bit, and you will find the link to the book so you can purchase it and get access to those videos she's talking about as well. And you have a new special offering that's going to go on top of this. You said you're getting ready to launch a Supervised Practicum course for voice teachers, right?
I am.
Interaction with you.
Yeah. So one of my passions is really helping teachers become more effective teachers, something 38 years ago I could have used as a younger teacher. And I am starting a course October 8th. You can find information on my website where it's a very small group of people. I won't accept more than 10, and I'll offer it again, where they're going to be teaching, probably, Matt, very much what your course is at Shenandoah. It's the Practicum course that I taught at University of Washington, helping other teachers, helping observe, give feedback, let them watch each other, have a conversation about why they chose what they hear. Like, first of all, how do you diagnose? And that's where I think the systematic approach helps, because at least it gives you a place to start, something concrete to think, all right, let's try an exercise within the respiration chapter. Oh, well, that didn't make any difference at all. Okay, well, let's try, or maybe for that particular student, that just didn't work and you need to try something else. So like I say, there are many roads that can lead to Rome. Mm-hmm. And so having these different strategies, but I think the systematic approach gives you a way to at least start. And so the practicum is basically going to be helping teachers to hear and strategize a vocal exercise for efficiency. So it'll be very interactive. It'll be very customized for the group.
That's awesome.
That's great. That's great. I think we need as much of that as we can possibly get.
Yeah, and you can find out more at KariRagan.com. You can find more about her teaching and her workshops and the book as well. It's been wonderful having you on the show. I hope people are picking this up, adding it to their library. It's a great addition, a must-have. Any final thoughts, parting words for people tuning in?
Before you go. So guys, you have to check this out because there are literally 18 different exercises on respiration. I'm sorry, I'm off the camera. 18 on respiration, 19 phonation, 19 registration, 21 articulation, 11 on resonance. It's got so many different things. If you are stuck or have questions, you want to learn something, grab this book. It's got different things to try for your students.
You, Mike. And I did try, and people often are like, what is the classical book and what is the CCM? But I tried to approach it that it was for everybody, right? Mm-hmm. Because cross training is so necessary anyway. And so there are really slight adjustments in the resonance, slight adjustments in the breath that we can make to make these aesthetics. Now, I'm not talking about the style, all the style components, right? That's a whole other ball game. But we're talking about just the fundamentals of efficient singing. So I do address both in the book as best I can.
Well, which is what also for the classroom because I have students that are both in our classical master's degree, classical voice ped, and our CCM voice ped, and that's definitely when I saw it and got my desk copy and was flipping through. I was like, this is what ped classes need, because we need to prepare the teachers of the future to be able to touch everything, and when in doubt, know how to refer out and who to refer out to. Yep. And so I think that's, if you are a CCM only teacher and you want to know a bit about what you do and how it might help classical learn some more, it's a great place to start. And then it also will help you identify the right classical teacher for that student when they get to the advanced stage and they need, to move on to a classical specialist. But lots of useful information. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's been wonderful having you.
Thank you.
Mike, it's good to see you again, hanging out in Vegas.
Yes. Thank you to all of our wonderful audience out there. I can see everyone chatting in there. So thank you.
Edry popped by. Say hello as well.
Oh, hi, Edry.
This is a great comment from Alice. This tonight was definitely worth my time. I do look forward to reading the book.
Thanks, Alice.
That's what we always love to hear. So thanks, Alice.
Thank you guys for inviting me.
You're very welcome. If you just tuned in and you didn't get to catch the whole show, it will be available for a couple more weeks on the voicelessons.com Facebook page. You'll be able to jump over there and watch the replay, catch anything that you missed. And if you're looking for more information like this, join us every Thursday night. We're usually on at 7 p.m. Eastern time, but we do make adjustments. Just look for announcements on the Facebook page. But where we're able to come on here and chat with authors, chat with voice teachers, and for singers, we even have live Q&A nights where we take your questions and we try to give you answers to give you a little bit of guidance as you're seeking to develop your own instrument.
And if you're a singer out there and some of the terms we talked about tonight didn't, were new to you, that's okay. That means there's a coach out there that can help explain this to you, break down your voice, and help you get started with some exercises. So just fill out a form on the website. We'll help you find a coach. So don't despair. We're here for you.
We are.
Guys, thanks for all you do for the voice community, both of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Kari.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.